welcome to the 5-Star Revolution podcast with your host, CJ Price. Please follow us on Facebook. Go share, follow, like, do what you got to do. Facebook page, 5-Star Revolution podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel right now, 5-Star Revolution podcast. Tonight, we have a very special guest. It's David Segan. How you doing today?
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Good.
So let's start from the beginning here. I always ask this question to every single guest that comes on my podcast. What's your earliest memory of professional wrestling?
Earliest memory? Oh, man. My brother had an Ultimate Warrior action figure, and that went along really well with my Super Mario action figures at the time. But my first memory of becoming a big wrestling fan, I tuned into an episode of Monday Night Raw, and it was something like Stone Cold was getting fired by Mr. McMahon at the beginning of the episode, and then Shane McMahon rehired him at the end of the episode, and then Stone Cold came and kicked everyone's ass at the end. So that's my first memory, and that was about any memory of any episode of Raw for the next year or two from there.
So you got into the Attitude Era.
Yes, big time.
All right. And who were your favorite wrestlers growing up?
Yeah, so I always say The Rock is my favorite wrestler. The Rock's the guy that made me a real wrestling fan, like love wrestling. But Christian is the guy who made me want to become a professional wrestler. But besides those two, man, I've always really liked everyone to some degree or another. But like, always big fan of The Undertaker. Love the Ministry of Darkness. Was a big Triple H fan. Stone Cold, Kurt Angle. I don't know if I can say his name, but Chris Benoit I always liked. Jericho was a big fan of him. Yeah, I know. Who's that? But yeah, man, like I've always more or less found something to like about everybody at one point or another.
So how'd you get your start into the professional wrestling business?
Yeah, so when I was 18 years old, just a young boy out of high school, I had a friend of my brother's, Josh Chernoff, who actually he has a show on Fight TV and does a lot of correspondence for them on a variety of wrestling and MMA events right now. But if you ever look him up, you'll see that he used to run his own wrestling promotion, the Teenage Wrestling Foundation. So when I was growing up, I would go to the shows and watch them. Then when I turned 18 and he had restarted the company, I learned how to take a bump and learned how to run the ropes, and that's it. And then I tried having matches. I wouldn't really call them matches, but I was performing what I thought was wrestling at the time. But then I stopped doing that, and 10 years later, I decided to go get trained, and I trained with Drew Gulak and Mike Quackenbush at the Chikara Wrestle Factory.
How was that experience for you?
It was awesome. I loved that there. I trained at Chikara. Met a lot of cool people over there. Got to learn under a lot of cool people like Drew Quackenbush, Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy. Yuta was there a lot, helping teaching at the time. So was Tracy Williams. And then I found out I was going to be moving to Texas. And before I moved to Texas, I trained at CZW for a couple months under DJ Hyde, which was awesome. And then I moved to Texas and started wrestling.
So I heard a rumor about Chikara when Chikara was a thing.
Yeah.
Where they taught wrestlers how to run the ropes, where they put the hand behind the ropes.
Yeah, that's how they teach it there. You do the normal running the ropes with your right arm over the top rope, but then they also teach you to grab the middle rope when you hit it. It's just supposed to be further protection if the top rope breaks.
Right.
I personally never liked the way that looked aesthetically, so I don't do that.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Like, I've heard Jim Cornette bash it a bunch of times.
Yeah. I always thought it looked. I don't know. I just never liked it, so I don't do it.
I'm glad you don't do it. I think it looks retarded.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Just I like wrestling when things don't look super choreographed or super crisp, and there's a time and place for that. A lot of people will do things that look absolutely beautiful and perfect and spot on. I don't think that's ever going to be me. So it'd be weird for me to kind of have that like style where it's a little wiry and things are a little out there, and then for me to like perfectly hit the ropes like that every time. So it wasn't. I'm not a big fan of it, so I don't do it.
So, do you remember your first official match? And if so, what do you remember from that match?
I do remember that match. So I actually just moved back from Texas. I've been in the Pennsylvania or Philadelphia region for the last 2-3 weeks now. My first match when I moved to Texas was against a gentleman named Chris Richter, who was kind of like a hardcore. I hate using the word legend, but he was synonymous with a lot of hardcore stuff in the Texas area for many years. And a guy named James Lightning, who I've never seen since that match. I don't know if he still wrestles. But it was a triple threat match, and Richter really took good care of the two of us. And throughout my 4 years, I wrestled mainly in a place called MPX in the DFW area. It's a great promotion. Everyone should check it out, network.mpxwrestling.com. It's a weekly show, so you get a lot of really cool stuff with that promotion. But Richter's a guy that throughout all the evolutions of my character there, I always interacted and had some type of match with him somewhere down the line. So it was cool looking back at that first triple threat match to see where I was with him there, to kind of see where I was with him maybe 6 months to a year ago.
So, speaking of character, do you mind explaining to the listeners about who Dave Segan is?
Yeah. Remember that's Sagan, but it's
Segan.
okay. I actually, a lot of people do pronounce it that way, but I always felt the best wrestlers are extensions of ourselves. But with that, you can't just go out there and be like, oh, I'm me. You know, I'm me, so everyone's going to give a crap about me. The one thing that I've been able to do, especially working at a place like MPX where it is a weekly show, we've been able to take what my guy was, which was your cocky young guy who thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread or whatever. And I mean, I'm in my 30s, so I'm not as young as most of the people there. But I look younger, so I can do that. But we started off there, and you're the cocky guy, you're this, you think you're great, you win championships. Oh, that's great. You whatever. But then at one point, we took that away from me, and I was surrounded by a group of people, and we took that away from me. And so it's like, okay, who is this guy now on his own? So I had to kind of start building from the ground up on this guy gaining his confidence back and what happens when he gains his confidence back. And from there, that group that I was with, we got back together as good guys. And so I gained that confidence as a singles guy. I'm a good guy. All of us are good guys. We're showing that we've evolved as people and as wrestlers at this point. But we did a really cool thing there. We had this match where if we lost, we had to disband as a group, and the person that got pinned had to leave. So I got pinned and I had to leave the group, and I became emo Dave Segan. So I wore all black, and I put the black lipstick on. I created like a group around me at that time of other people that had traumatic things happen to them for the wrestling characters. We were like the South Park emo kids pretty much. And then from there, we took that into some type of like gothic Ministry of Darkness group. And then I lost a casket match, and I came back 6 months later after a COVID break. And I was kind of like a good version of the bad guy that I was before. So it's all about, to me, having some type of identity as a character and telling a story of the peaks and the lows of that character, much like somebody in real life, because not everything's always going to be high, not everything's going to be low. Things are going to happen to you, which are going to tell a broader story of who you are. And that's the one thing that I really, really like to focus on when I wrestle. And that's not just for character too. Like, you look at a match, somebody getting beat up and trying to come back. It's like, what are those peaks and valleys for that person in the confines of an 8 to 12 to 15-minute match that you can tell?
So, speaking about good guys and bad guys, what's your favorite thing to do? Being a face or being a heel?
So character-wise, I like being a heel because you can do whatever you want, and it's a lot more fun. The last thing I did this character where I was the living legend of MPX, and it was kind of like a Bret Michaels Rock of Love, washed up 80s metal hairband type of guy, and I was just a real doofus, and it was a lot of fun. But wrestling wise, I like being a babyface more because you can be a little flashier and have cooler stuff. And I really like selling. I like getting beat up and just fighting back, and that's just my preferred role. Wrestling wise, character wise, I love being a heel.
So when you go to a new promotion,
Mhm.
and what is your mindset? Like, do you want to steal the show? Do you want to have the best match on the card? Or do you just go there, absorb everything, and just learn?
So at this point, it's really important to me to find out what the promoter wants of me of that night, because it depends on the type of show that they're running. So you might go on a show where it's what I like to call a spot show, where it's just a bunch of good matches and everybody's trying to steal the show and have the best match of the night. So those are great because you get to go out there and really just try to kick ass. And it's important when you go out there to really do the best that you can. But sometimes you're on a show where they may not want every match to be match of the night. You know, they might be having some type of match to progress one character this way to tell a story that's going this way. So you have to kind of find out what the promoter wants of you in the spot that you're in that night. So if I go out there and they've got a big main event set for the night, let's say, and I'm the first match or the first or second match of the show, and it's a big show for this company, and the biggest match is the main event. I might want to find out a few of the things that the main event's doing so that I don't do them in my match and take those spots away from them to make their stuff less important. Um, you want Obviously you want to go to a show and get over with a crowd, and you want people to think you're good. And word of mouth really helps. But what really helps, in my opinion, is promoters knowing they can count on you for what they want of you. So while I want to have that buzz and have that word of mouth from the fans, it's also really important to me to know that promoters know I'm doing the job that they're actually hiring me to do that night.
So when you deal with promoters that have heat with each other and they tell you, "Hey, man, you can't work for that company. You can't work over there." What do you
Uh-huh.
say to the promoters?
So luckily, I haven't run into that yet. I've run into promoters that definitely don't like each other, but no one's ever told me, "Hey, don't work there, don't do this." I've had some that'll be like, "Hey, like, hey, you're the champion right now. You can't go over here and lose, or you can't go over here and do whatever." And I personally get it. I think it's stupid. I get it. But those are situations where promoters actually do kind of understand that to a certain degree. So I've been in that situation before where I'm a champion in one promotion, and on a Saturday night, that would be the night that I'd be doing that. On a Friday night, somewhere maybe 5 miles down the road, I'm working there. Just let them know, hey, like, I know you're gonna want me to put over your talent here, which is fine, but we just got to find a way that makes more sense for what I'm doing over here, because a lot of the promotions share the same fans. So when they see one guy going somewhere that's 10, 15 minutes down the road, and they don't want to see them, treated like a scrub. So I had that happen recently where I was at a place that was really close on a Friday, and I was a champion at the place on Saturday. So we did a finish where like the ref was screwing with me and all this stuff, and just gotta try to work that out with them. I mean, at the end of the day, do what they want you to do. In my opinion, I'm not gonna walk out and be unprofessional like that. But it is what it is.
Speaking of professionalism, how do you how do you deal with backstage politics?
It's whatever. Everybody's just trying to, do the best by themselves, and they're trying to get the most they can out of it, and I can't fault anyone for that. Luckily, the main place I worked, MPX, there really wasn't a lot of that. Most people were just happy to be there and be at a place where they could work weekly and get better, as opposed to really worrying about their wins and losses. So I've never had a problem there. However, there was one place I worked recently where I'm going to pat myself on the back. Uh, I I kind of played the politics role for a moment where we were doing a baseball game. We were doing a show at a baseball game, and we had a whole thing set up where the beginning of the show, the evil manager was going to challenge like a baseball player to some type of thing, and if his tag team won the match, he would get to throw the first pitch at the game. So it's like, okay, cool, the heels will win there and we'll put them over. Well, the ring didn't show up until halfway through the game, so that whole stipulation's out the window. So I went to the promoter. I was like, hey, like, we don't have this stipulation anymore where there's the first pitch. So it's like, why don't we just have all the baby faces win tonight to send everyone home happy? And you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I was like, okay. So I played the evil political game for a minute there at the outdoor baseball show where we had 3 matches. So it meant a lot to everyone.
That's good. That's good to hear, man. So how long you been wrestling so far?
Yeah, I've about 4 years. I'm 4 years in, close to 5.
So with almost 5 years in the business, I'm sure you've been on the road. What's the longest road trip you've done so far?
Longest road trip was from Texas to Atlanta, Georgia. We loaded up a car of bros who drove out after a show on Saturday. So the show ended at 10 o'clock on Saturday. We finally got everyone together to leave around 11. Then we got to the venue the next day at like 3 p.m. We tried to like sit down and rest before our match and stuff, but you're kind of wired but tired, as I would say. So we do that match, and then we drive home that night at like 11 o'clock at midnight. So that sucked. I don't think I'd do that again. I did that twice. So I paid my dues on that road trip right there. I don't need to do that again.
So piggybacking on road trips, I'm sure you have 1 or 2 funny road stories, or even backstage funny stories. Mind telling us a few?
Yeah, I had so my first road trip when I moved down here, I got in the car with my good friend Ryan Remington, great wrestler. You should check him out. We were part of that group together with a guy named Tommy Becker. He wasn't on that trip, but we got in the. It was me, him, another trainee at the time who goes by the name Malachi the Young Lion. Malachi, if you're out there somewhere, just know one day I'll have a match with you. And we were in the car with a guy I've had a lot of matches with at this time, Jason Silver, who's been around in the area for a while. But Ryan was driving, and he has a little bit of a temper on him. And Jason is a little bit of a sarcastic asshole. So I just remember we were driving, and he was giving Ryan a hard time. And Ryan's new to this too, so he's being a good sport. And at one point, Silver just threw like an empty bottle at Ryan while he's driving, and Ryan's not saying a word. He's just there, silent, just with the look of like he's going to kill somebody in his face. You can see it through the rear mirror. And he's just sitting there driving, rubbing the steering wheel with his thumb intently. Like he's just holding all the rage in. And I'm just like, Silver, you need to cut it out. And at that point where I think you thought Ryan was going to pull over and kick his ass, he finally did. Another fun one when we went to San Antonio for a seminar that Christian Cage was doing. And it was a bunch of us in the car. It was me, a guy named Jackson Stone, who does a lot of really good mental health stuff with his brand You Are Loved. He's someone, if you ever get a chance to talk to, you should. Guy Michael Schaefer, been around the area for a while. He's another guy you should talk to. He's great. My current best wrestling friend, young Tatum Manning, was in the car. And this other guy, El Sapo. And if you ever talk to anyone in the DFW area as far as wrestling goes, if you're asked them about El Sapo, a good amount of them will probably have some type of story for you. But he's a really good guy. He's just one of those dudes that doesn't always he doesn't have that presence of mind to know how he should act in certain social situations. He's just kind of
he's not the tool in the shed.
Yeah. He's one of those. So it's a 6-hour car ride there and a 6-hour car ride back. And he's just getting busted on the whole time. And there was just 2 moments on this ride that they were funny because he was asleep in the back seat, and he was like, I don't know, it was uncomfortable or something. But he said, do you use profanity on your podcast?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay,
man.
Cool. So there's just one point where he was laying there and he was asleep, and he just goes, fuck, and we're like, what the hell? And then like an hour later, he's sleeping. He goes, fuck, and he falls back asleep. It's like, what the hell? So yeah, that was a fun car ride.
Was that on purpose or?
I'd like to think so, but knowing this guy, probably not.
So, Mr. Sagan, or Sagan, sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Sagan, this is a new little segment that I'm trying on my podcast. Do you mind shooting a promo in character for me, real quick?
Yeah. About your podcast or about anything you
Anything that comes to mind.
Okay. Listen up here. What you're doing right now is you're listening to the podcast. You're listening to Dave Segan. Not Sagan, not Segan. A lot of people want to say a lot of different things about the way my last name's pronounced, but I'm going to tell you one way it's pronounced. That's the correct way, and that is Segan. In your ears right now, they may be experiencing something. They may be experiencing confusion. They may be experiencing lust. They may be experiencing bliss. But I'll tell you one thing, Buck. When you listen to Dave Segan, and when you see him in the ring doing his thing, the one thing you're going to feel is happiness. Because I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm pretty entertaining. And I'm pretty. Look at this right here. I've been growing this little ponytail for about a year now. And that's about a year of strength. A year of masculinity. And when I get in the ring the next time I do it, I can promise you one thing and one thing only. I, Dave Segan, am going to amaze you. And you'll get on your feet and you will say, while you put your hand in the air, Hail Segan.
Very good, man. Very good.
I like talking.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate it. So what can we expect out of you in the next 3 years?
Next 3 years, hopefully you'll be seeing me on your television set or your computer or whatever. But who knows if that'll happen. That's the dream. So I'm out here. I'm back in Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia area where I'm from. So hopefully soon I'll be getting back in there, getting in the car with my friends I trained with at Chikara and CZW and starting all over again from rock bottom, trying to find my way in the crazy world of professional wrestling. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to gain some traction, gain some buzz, and you'll see me in some of the better indies. I'd love to work things like Beyond, Limitless, but, that's probably a long ways off. So hopefully, the name will just be out there a little bit more in the next 3 years, and I'll be closer to the American dream, which is making a living while fighting in tights.
That's very
what
true.
We all want. It's what we all deserve.
So if there's one thing you wish you knew before you started wrestling, what would that be?
How badly my knees would be at 33. My knees are not very good at the moment, so hopefully that'll change. But I'll be honest. I thought when I started this, I thought that I really thought I had a natural charisma and personality that would illuminate the wrestling fans. And I think the ones that do get to see me, they do enjoy my work and they enjoy my personality and my detailed storytelling and character development. I really was hoping and I really thought that would be something that by now, 4 or 5 years in, would have taken me a little bit further than I am. So I appreciate you doing this podcast with me to help me get my name out there a little more. I really do appreciate it. So I guess I would have said by now I wished I would have been a little further along. But, the road's not easy or quick for really anyone. People will be plugging away for years and years and years trying to make something of it. So I guess I'm devoting myself to that.
I agree with you with the knees part because I myself used to be a wrestler on the indie scene in my area, and my knees are killing me, man.
Yeah, man, dude, it is rough. The last thing I did I had hurt my right knee a little while ago, and that's pretty much good. But I hurt my left knee my second to last match in Texas, and you know what I was doing? I did a move that I like to call middle school, which is old school from the middle rope, which that didn't hurt my knee. What hurt my knee was as I celebrated that move, I did like a slide on both of my knees while playing air guitar. And I felt something in my knee while I did that slide and while I got off the ground. That's what hurt my knee. I haven't hurt myself doing any wrestling moves. It's always something stupid. That's how we all get hurt.
For me, it was frog splashes.
Well, that is a move. I could see how that would do it.
So, speaking of injuries, how do you prevent injuries nowadays?
Dude, stretching is something that everyone should do, which my wonderful girlfriend tells me to do all the time, which I don't do, and I will start doing that when I'm wrestling again. But I think the number one thing is, just when people are going through training, really try to master all the basics of everything. Repetition, muscle memory is really important. So while you're initially training, being there as often as you can. And I think, it's good when you're wrestling for a little while to go to training too. I'm guilty of not going, so that's something I should probably change soon. But, I think knowing your body and just trying to limit high impact and high risk things as much as possible. Because, if there's one thing that I honestly have found out, you can get a lot more out of a good character moment, and people will connect with you more than going and doing a crazy dive to the outside, And not saying that everyone gets hurt on those high risk things, but the margin of error is high. I've found some of my greatest moments and the ones that have connected with the crowd that's been watching me grow over the last 4 years aren't necessarily moves. They're the things in between, the mannerisms, the poses, stuff like that. Just those are the things that really connect with the crowd.
Very good answer, and I agree with that statement, my friend. So a couple more questions before I let you go. With WWE moving on with signing independent wrestling talent, they're going to focus on bigger guys now for some reason. I don't know why, but to piggyback off that, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's going to be harder for indie talent to get signed to major companies?
Well, coming from, a boisterous and huge, but very generous 5'9", 185 to 195-pound man, yeah, that kind of sucks. That's if that is the real mandate for hiring talent, that makes it a little harder and a little more competitive in other places for a guy like me to hopefully get a shot to make a living doing this. But, it is what it is. Obviously, as wrestlers, WWE is a dream place for most of us who want to work. Most of us grew up watching it and want to be there. I can tell you, though, it has seemed over the last year or so, maybe it's not the best work environment. I'm not gonna say just only over the last year or so. I mean, for a while. The moment that I really felt that way is when I saw Braun Strowman get fired and then Bray Wyatt. It's like, wow, if they literally got rid of those guys, like you're on the chopping block at any moment if you're working there. Like I felt like nobody is safe. And it seemed like the cool. So I've done extra work for WWE and I've done extra work for AEW. And WWE was really cool. I've really enjoyed it, but there was just the atmosphere in AEW was a lot more like a cool job. It was. I've had jobs before which were super corporate, and then I've had other jobs which are corporate jobs, but the atmosphere in teams are just a lot more laid back and worker friendly. And I felt like that's the way it was in AEW. And when you see these guys talk about it, it seems like that's the general vibe. So I'm not going to say I wouldn't work for WWE. If they came to me and offered me a contract, I'm not going to say, oh man, no, I'm not going to do that. I absolutely would. I feel most people would. But at this point, if I had to say like where I would want to work as is like my current goal and dream in wrestling, AEW would probably be the place I'd want to be, I'd say.
I would love to see you there someday, my
Well,
friend.
thank you. I appreciate that.
And my last question for you is, Mr. Sagan,
Hmm.
is if there's one lesson that you learned in professional wrestling, how do you carry that lesson onto your personal life?
Um, I'd say something I've learned, and it's not necessarily something I've learned from professional wrestling, but it's something I've taken with me through wrestling, just through life experience. I think sometimes it's just good not to take everything so seriously. You know, like, and I know everybody wants to be as professional as they can and be the best they can, and but especially at this level, for those that want to make it, I understand people they want everything in their matches to go perfect. They want to be the ultimate wrestler. They want to be this or that. But like, let's take for instance the place I was at, MPX in Dallas, which is one of the bigger indie promotions in Dallas. Pretty much all the indie workers want to work there because it's a weekly show that has a good crowd every week. But people, if one little thing went wrong in their match, they'd come to the back and they'd throw a shit fit about it. It's like, dude, I get it. It's a good promotion. We've got a network. You can get good footage. But at the end of the day, it's run in a strip mall in Bedford, Texas. Like, at the indie level, if you make mistakes or if you do whatever, like, it's expected. Don't be so hard on yourself if not everything that you're doing is perfect. It's okay. And that's just something that I've taken with me through life too.
Even the
I think,
pros screw up, man.
yeah, even the pros screw up. Like, it is what it is. Like, we all saw that the highlights of the Charlotte and Nia Jax match from Raw this week. Like, shit happens. Not. I mean, if it's that bad, yeah, people might talk about it for a couple days. But they'll move on, and no one's gonna care. It's all about what you do the next time you're out there. And it's just learning from those mistakes. There's been so many matches where, like, I had one recently where I was with a guy who's really new, and he kind of forgot his comeback on me. And at one point I was looking at it, and when I watched the match back, in the moment I told him to move to a part of it that was different. But like, you have that moment, I'm learning, like, you can grab somebody for a second, talk to them, go away and go into something else. Like, it seems like it's an obvious thing to us when we're doing it. You're in the moment, time moves so slow, but it doesn't move that slow when you're watching it back later and for the crowd. So like, he was bumping me and bumping me, and then he forgot to do something. He awkwardly tried to pick me up and he fell. It's like, well, we had a moment there where I could have gone, said to him what to do, fucking pushed him away, and then he could have done it. And that might have seemed like, oh my God, that was so obvious and blatant, and that was so long for me and you, but the crowd doesn't know. And that's one of those things. The crowd doesn't know. They really don't. When you and I mean, I'm a wrestling fan at heart, and we all are. But when you're doing it, like, you learn. And I'm not trying to shit on any fans, but like, you learn that there's a lot that they don't know, and that's okay. They don't have to know. They may think that they do, but they really don't.
We still gotta save that little secret. We can't let all of them out. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, where can our fans and our listeners connect with you on social
Yeah.
media?
So that's the hard part for me, because I am very bad at social media, and I actually just switched all my handles this last week. Okay, so at Twitter, you can find me at Dave Segan. Last name is spelled Segan. So that's at Dave Segan. On Instagram, or as I like to call it, Instantgram, you can find me at Dave_Sagan. And I do have a Facebook page that you can connect with me at, which is Dave Segan. There will be two pages because, spoiler, that is my real name. So you'll see one that has a picture of me with a wonderful dog named Gator. Don't friend request that one. That's my personal page. The other one is a cool picture of me with smoke. So
Nice.
I know that can't be seen. Let's just advertise a picture done by Greg Teg, a great photographer out in the Texas area. This guy is the tits, as I would like to say. Look at that
Very
cool
nice.
picture of
Very
me.
nice. Doesn't even look like you.
I know. Dude, if you ever take a gander through my Instagram and look at the promo pictures that I've taken of the different variations of Dave Segan throughout the years, none of them look alike. I look like a completely different person with everything I do. That's the one thing I think's cool about what I've done is every time I switch things up, like I go all out, new gear, new hair color, everything's completely different anytime I go through an alteration.
Well, Mr. Dave Segan, thank you so much for coming on here on the 5-Star Revolution podcast. It was a true pleasure. And thank you so much for telling your story right here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. We wish you the best of luck in your career.
Thank you.
And for all of you listeners, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, 5-Star Revolution Podcast on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. We're still giving away a $200 Visa gift card. So get to it. Thank you, Mr. Dave Segan. You have a great night, sir.
You too.